Live look at the U.S. Capitol on this peaceful Friday afternoon. And as we all remember, it was a much different scene back on January 6th, 2021. During its first public hearing, the House Select Committee took us back to the chaos of that day as thousands of people stormed the Capitol. NewsNation correspondent Kelly Meyer is live in Washington. And Kelly, a lot of people tuned in to that first primetime hearing.
Yeah, that's right, Nicole. We're hearing that nearly 20 million people tuned in to this first 2-hour hearing from the January 6th committee, both on cable and broadcast networks. To put it in perspective, though, just over 16 million people tuned into this year's Oscars awards, and over 100 million tuned into this year's Super Bowl. And we don't know yet how it impacted those who were tuning in last night, but we know that the committee was setting out to grab America's attention, revealing unseen footage and laying out what the committee calls a, quote, sophisticated 7-part plan by former President Donald Trump to steal the election that led to the January 6th riots. Trump's rhetoric shut down by members of his administration, including his own daughter, saying she agreed with former Attorney General Bill Barr, who said it was BS that the election was stolen. Trump saying today on Truth Social that his daughter was only trying to be, quote, respectful to Bill Barr, adding that, quote, the so-called rush on the Capitol was not caused by me. Today, President Joe Biden speaking out about the hearing. Take a listen.
It's important to the American people to understand what truly happened and to understand that the same forces that led January 6th remain at work today. It's about our democracy itself. Allow no one to place a dagger at the throat of our democracy. That's what those hearings are all about.
And the president revealing here that he didn't actually watch the hearing last night, but he says he will look at those in the days ahead. Republicans we've talked to didn't tune in either, saying that it's distracting from other issues plaguing Americans like high gas prices. The next hearing is set for this Monday at 10 a.m. It's the first of 3 scheduled for next week. Nicole?
All right. Kelly Meyer live from D.C. Thank you for that. And now for today's Rush Hour Roundtable. We are bringing in our panel earlier to discuss the news throughout the hour. So first, of course, we do want to introduce you to today's panel. We have Ashley Banfield, host of Banfield, right here on NewsNation. Next, Megan Basham, reporter for The Daily Wire. Capri Cafaro is the former minority leader of the Ohio State Senate and host of the Eat Your Heartland Out podcast and radio show. And finally, last but not least, Jason Rantz, host of the Jason Rantz Show on KTTH in Seattle. Panel, thank you so much for being here tonight.
Absolutely.
All right, well, we just heard from Kelly Meyer there on the January 6th hearing. Our big question, did the hearing live up to primetime expectations? Ashley, we start with you.
So I was super surprised to hear the critics say that it was a big buildup and then a nothing burger because as a legal journalist, I look for, signs of a smoking gun and evidence and a connection between Donald Trump and the January 6th rally, right? Because that's what the suggestion is here, that he was at the concentric circle of the, the spokes of the conspiracy. That's what the hearing was trying to establish and will be with evidence. But we had never heard before about Republicans asking for pardons after the January 6th. Right now, if you don't think you did anything wrong, why would you be asking the president, after all this nastiness played out on TV, for a pardon? I mean, that was just one huge smoking gun. The other one was, apart from Bill Barr saying that he told the president over and over that there was no steal, was the fact that Sidney Powell and Mike Flynn and Rudy Giuliani were meeting in the Oval Office alone with the president. And 1 hour later, he sent out the tweet on December 19th saying, come to the Capitol. It'll be wild. Those things are very, very damning.
I think the real question is, does the American public care at this point? I mean, I think Ashley definitely, with her legal lens is making a very good point. But, I think we've become both so polarized as well as so desensitized to, chaos. I think a lot of people were expecting maybe, it's a primetime hearing. Are we going to see, sparks fly and Rudy Giuliani running around pleading the fifth and screaming at people or God knows what, right? And when it wasn't that, I think maybe that's where the critics were saying, well, it didn't deliver. I think that the objective of the January 6th committee in this 2-hour hearing was to reintroduce the issue of January 6th, and in my humble opinion, one of the darkest days, single days in our American history, recent history, and reintroduce it to the American public in a way that was easy to understand all of the events going into that day, and then bookending it with some compelling testimony from law enforcement and that video, and so of the events. And so I think they tried to just make it organized, easy to understand, and resetting the stage, because unfortunately we have very short attention spans in the 21st century, and we needed, I think at least the January 6th committee wanted to try to come back and reintroduce this, and then we're going to have, you know, a number of hearings going forward, one more on prime time.
Okay, I think that, you know, something Ashley said there about Bill Barr, that being sort of a primetime big moment, and that Capri just mentioned it also. We have to look at the fact that this was very much not new. I know that because Bill Barr said the same thing on my boss, Ben Shapiro's podcast not very long ago. He said it in his memoir. So that was not new information. And you would think that if you have a limited time to hold the public's attention, you're going to lead with your strongest argument. And I think we can say that this was certainly not new, and Bill Barr was not offering new information. And as far as this tweet from Trump, I think it's really hard to make the connection that Trump, who, while I will not say did not behave well there, we have to go, he's known for doing a lot of sort of wild tweeting. So him saying, hey, come to the Capitol, it's going to be wild, that certainly does not make the connection that he was signaling something, any more than Kobefi was signaling something. And you hear sort of these wild arguments, and I think you have to show something a little more connected than Trump tweeted something and hoped that some of these, loose organizations would interpret it in a certain way. I certainly don't think that was what was going on. And we look at the purpose of what this investigation, what this presentation last night was supposed to accomplish. One of the key things we have to look at was who was on it. And what we know for sure, who was not on it was Jim Jordan and Jim Banks. And we know that House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy was not given an opportunity. And this was
I think we're having some technical issues there.
He was historically not given an opportunity to put who he wanted onto that committee. And that tells you what its real purpose was. And that is to be a political show.
Well, Jason, before you respond, I want to hear that sound. Megan has referred to it now. Ashley referred to it. Kelly in her report as well. So let's listen to what Bill Barr had to say last night. And then let's also listen to some of what Liz Cheney had to say in her introduction. Let's see if we have that pulled up.
I made it clear I did not agree with the idea of saying the election was stolen and putting out this stuff, which I told the president was bullshit. And, I didn't want to be a part of it, and that's one of the reasons that went into me deciding to leave when I did.
I say this to my Republican colleagues who are defending the indefensible. There will come a day when Donald Trump is gone, but your dishonor will remain.
All right, Jason, what do you say?
Yeah, I'm not sure Liz Cheney has the moral high ground from the Cheney family on anything right now. But I mean, what we saw last night was a rehash of what everyone already knew. There was nothing actually new presented. And for something that was supposedly going to be produced in a way that's supposed to connect with the American people by a veteran newsman, I didn't really get that. The most compelling part of what we saw yesterday was the video that we've already seen, but just from a slightly different angle of the assault on the Capitol. And obviously everyone already knows that that was a horrendous act. It was a stain on our history, but that did not at all last night connect the president directly to this. There was no smoking gun, not as it relates to the main point of having this hearing was that Trump actually ordered this and was part of some sort of conspiracy. That tweet that they referenced had nothing happened that day.
Thank you.
The evidence is coming. Like they laid it out. They opened the case. This is the way every trial works, right? You have an opening and then you present the evidence.
Except this is not a trial. Yes, except this is not a trial because there's absolutely no opposition. all we're doing, but it's not operating like one because a trial would have an opposition, and there's no opposition here. What we saw here was some selectively edited videos. But again, beyond that, you have your first night. Everyone agrees on this panel that this was supposed to be that sort of the blockbuster event. This is supposed to be the way to capture the American people and prove to them that you have a case here. They did not do that. Had they had that smoking gun, we would have seen that yesterday. But pretty much everything that we're going to see over the coming weeks will have already been reported on because they leaked all of that stuff already. Nothing
but you know how
there
it works
was
with
new.
reasonable doubt,
Why would
right?
you not present that?
You never get, and I'll just take you into the criminal sphere here. You never get a murderer saying, I'm going to murder someone on tape. It's super rare. What you have is an evidentiary trial that allows people to sort of put all of it together, and sometimes they have to make reasonable chasm leaps. And so I sense that that's what they're doing in this hearing, is they're putting together all the evidence, laying it out in a nice linear fashion. Hey, you don't think the Americans are a jury? The Americans are a jury, and this could end up being
not in
referred
this
to the
case
DOJ.
Because he's not the president.
Right, and where's the defense then in this?
But he could be, unless there's a felony conviction. If there's a referral to the DOJ and there's a felony conviction, he can't be the president again. I think that's where a lot of this is going.
But I think you also have to ask if this was
that's really what this is about. This is about preventing the president from running for re-election and trying to further.
Why Nancy Pelosi?
Go ahead, Megan.
Wouldn't you ask why Nancy Pelosi was, why are we not looking into questions of why she ignored early calls and early warnings that there was going to be potentially threat activity on the ground? Why did she wait 3 hours to allow the National Guard
That's
to
a whole
step
other
up?
question, and we should have a hearing sometime down the road. But that doesn't change what happened, right? It doesn't change anything.
What about the whataboutisms of, just because someone may have acted, in ill form does not, absolve the other party of acting, poorly or needing investigation, as Ashley just said. I mean, yes, maybe there needs to be a discussion or a hearing about that. That doesn't preclude us from having this discussion. I know what, a lot of folks are saying, well, it's not really a trial because there isn't a defense, there isn't a counter argument, there isn't cross-examination, this is political.
But there's not even really an investigation.
Well, I mean, obviously,
but
I think that they are trying to build a case of some form. Now, everyone is going to have their own speculation of what the objective is behind that, making that case. Is it because they want to keep Donald Trump from never getting in the White House ever again? Which I'm sure, there are folks that feel that way, or is it because they want to get to the truth?
Well, why are they doing it?
Which is what other people have to say, and unfortunately,
why is it being done
down
in
to the
prime time?
divisiveness.
Right, and
Capri,
that's a great thing to end on. Yes, the divisiveness, exactly.
For the networks, and
because yes, as we know, the country is pretty much divided almost evenly on this. 52% versus 48% think that we should have this hearing. The 48% say let's just move on. I think it is reflected in today's panel. We appreciate you. Thank you for weighing in on this. We're going to move on to another topic right after. Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.